Hi there, I'm Steve Thurston. Some of you may know me as Stevie T. I'm Master of Dragon's Tail Historical Fencing. This is my video application for certification by the Marxbrudder Guild, so hello fellow guild members who will be assessing me on this. I have to say, I've left the majority of my equipment in class, so I'm not going to be able to do a complete full demonstration. There won't be much in the way of practicality because of that, and also because this is very much a system that very few people have done any work on. There's not a lot of evidence out there, so it takes a lot of work, and I'm still working through the majority of that at the moment. Now, moving on, the introduction of modern media into schools has meant that a vast amount of this tradition has been lost, and it's no longer taught in schools. Prior to this, there was the introduction of the whiteboard. That meant that many of the skills that we used had sort of been lost, and were beginning to be forgotten even just a couple of years ago. But even before then, in my childhood, the type of blackboard monitor had gone out of use. It sort of left common usage. I think this was partly due to sort of equality at the time. People weren't allowed to be sort of showing favouritism towards particular students, so it meant everybody had a chance to be the blackboard monitor. So not only did we lose the title at that point, because of this duty we shared, nobody really had a chance to sort of perfect the art and really hone their skills in this matter. Still, there are evidence and there are examples of different aspects of the art that we used during the time. They're not in any one source. It's pulling information from a variety of different ways, and there are similarities and differences between the traditional blackboard in earnest monitoring and the more up-to-date sort of whiteboard monitoring, which is still used in some places, certainly not in schools anymore, unfortunately. Many of the techniques of both blackboard can be applied to both blackboard monitoring and the whiteboard as well. Not all of them. The key difference being with whiteboards, in a lot of areas, particularly in the workplace, horizontal lines are taped onto the board. This means that you have to be careful which techniques you use in order not to damage these taped lines. Obviously, we want to maintain quite a professional image of what we're doing, and then scruffy looking taped lines isn't really sort of the type of image that we want to be presenting to the wider community. With both systems, whether it's on a blackboard or on a whiteboard, the student must be careful when dealing with any technique that he tries to apply, because there is always a danger that clothing can come into contact with material that's on the board and can be transferred. As I was saying, professionality is something that must be considered when professional image and outdoor presentation is something that must be considered when being a student at blackboard monitoring. The biggest difference actually applies in the blackboard, where this is a particularly difficult situation that needs to be managed. When dealing with whiteboard, when you're cleaning the blackboard, dust will be produced. Now, both blackboards and whiteboards have a shelf along the bottom. On a blackboard, this will collect the dust as it falls, and if the blackboard monitor isn't careful, doesn't perform his duties properly, or his techniques properly, then the dust will begin to gather along this bottom shelf. Now, for many modern practitioners, this probably isn't such a major problem, but if we look at the historical context of blackboard monitoring, the schools in which these duties were given out, it was customary for part of the uniform of these schools to include a blazer. Obviously, if you've got a blazer, this would be at the same sort of level. The bottom of the blazer would be at the same sort of level as the shelf, and the blazer can get caught in the dust. This would then create, obviously, white marks across the bottom of the blazer. It may be, I haven't done the research yet, but it may be that these white marks were actually a sign, as it were, an outward visible sign, almost a badge of rank as a blackboard monitor. It does require more research, and it is something I will be looking into as we move further on. And I do have to say as well, this only applies in an English context. It's all I've done the research into yet. I don't know if the schools of Europe insisted on the wearing of the blazer at school. That's something obviously that I need to look into, but I think at the time being I just want to keep my context set in the English system, and not sort of start to have my concept of the blackboard monitoring techniques influenced by non-English systems at the moment. Now, there are several tools that are used by the blackboard monitor. The most traditional one that most people are familiar with is the blackboard rubber. It's generally a wooden block with a felt block attached onto the underside. In more modern contexts, synthetics coming in so that wooden block, which is the handle, is replaced by a plastic grip. And it's generally found in more modern context where the whiteboard is used, in all honesty. It's not part of the sort of real earnest and traditional blackboard monitoring process. In addition to that, the tool used probably predates even the traditional wood block board rubber, would be the cloth. This is used on both blackboards and even now it's still used in whiteboards in some circles. Whiteboards have also, to replace that, moved on again to other sort of simulations of that, so they're sometimes using paper towels or even sort of tissues, as it were. One final tool that is used, it's a bit rarer, and that's the damp cloth. It's used by the more conscientious students and monitors, and I'll come back to that later on. Now, believe it or not, there are actually techniques that are used in blackboard monitoring, particularly in reference to cleaning the board itself, and there are actually 5 master wipes. The first of which is the long swipe. This can be used both horizontally and vertically, involving starting at one side of the board and in one continuous motion moving across the whole length of the board. As I say, it can be used horizontally or it can be used vertically. You tend to see in more modern whiteboard monitoring, you tend not to see this sort of vertical cleaning. As I say, the vertical technique, when you consider the tape lines, that's going to disrupt those tape lines quite quickly, and the technique is going to be lost in there as well. The smoothness and clarity will be lost as well. I will say as well at this point, I haven't yet been able to define the precise footwork that's used, particularly in these long swipes. It's a lot harder to sort of get grasp to. It's not mentioned directly, but I'm sure I will come across more evidence for that as my research continues. The other technique that can be used is the short wipe. The short wipe, in all honesty, you tend to find more in a horizontal cleaning manner. This is where we're just taking a short wipe. You tend to find it's used vertically, but to descend directly down the board, so that you get the short wipe descending in a vertical manner. Again, probably not used in the modern whiteboard monitoring that we see as still left in professional environments. As I say, but you will also sort of find it used vertically, running horizontally. Again, so it's a short wipe as it comes across. And again, that's one that's probably not used so much in the modern whiteboard systems. After the short wipe comes the quarter. In some traditions, it's known as the arc. It follows the circumference of 1/4 of the circle, hence its naming. It's usually the first quarter of the circle, that is from 12 till 3. It's made on the right side of the blackboard monitor and is used in a lateral fashion. Again, I'm not sure on the footwork. With these particular things, it does seem that these arcing steps would work, the arcing swipes would work better with short gathering steps. But again, we're still experimenting with this to see if there are other ways of applying it in a still valid technique. The fourth technique of the 5 master swipes is the round. This involves completely circular motions. It can be made both forwards and it can be made going backwards. It has the advantage of clearing quite large areas and disturbing previous swipes that have been made. Again, more research still needs to be done to the precise footwork that's involved with those. And the final of the 5 master swipes is the quarter backwards. This one's made on the left side of the monitor. Just excuse me, I'm turning my back. So it's actually made onto this side, and I wipe with these arcs coming across as I void out with my backwards, basically. It is quite a risky technique to apply. As I've mentioned previously, it's quite important that we don't come into the blackboard, contact with the blackboard, and obviously when we're moving this way, there is this danger that our right arm may actually engage with previous material that's already remaining on the board, and we may find that we actually get when the master of the board, sometimes known as the teacher, once he's applied his art, that's when the blackboard monitors tend to come in, and it tends to be when we do the majority of the work. I haven't actually come up with a specific term that describes the actions of this master or teacher. However, within the context that we're using at the moment, it seems that the word written would fill the niche quite well there. Obviously, if I do come up with research and evidence for that, I'll modify my definitions at that point. Having said that, we normally, as a blackboard monitor, we normally work in the after. There are points at which a blackboard monitor can work in the before. This technique is usually applied with a damp cloth, and it's aimed to create a completely clean and spotless surface for the master or teacher to apply his art to. There is some research, though, that this might actually be classed as a different type of tradition. The research that I've found so far means that it does appear that students who of blackboard monitoring who applied their art in this way were given their own unique title. And the title that we've come across so much about is the teacher's pet. As I say, it may be that this is going to, if this research can be taken, then that might take us down a complete new avenue to find out about the evolution of blackboard monitoring. But as I say, it's something we'll have to look forward to in the future. But anyway, that concludes my presentation on the art of blackboard monitoring. I hope that the Guild members will consider my application with all seriousness, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. If anybody has any questions, just get in touch with me directly, and I'll be more than willing to share any research that I've done on the subject.